So we're continuing our discussion on science to Samadhi. The only purpose, and literally the only purpose of spirituality, is to get us off the matter and take us into spirituality. And there are so many different ways it's been told several times in thousands of scriptures, different religions, different people. Ultimately it boils down to one thing: take your mind off the matter. Mind is what matters. Matter does not mind. Really. So yesterday I was listening to Swarupanand. He's a disciple of Chinmayanand. He said it beautifully. He says, when the matter matters, matters mind. But when the mind matters, matter doesn't matter. It's kind of twisty, but what it basically means is when the matter is very important to you, matter will be in your mind all the time. So your mind will be filled with matter. But when the mind starts mattering, mind is an inner phase of yourself. When that becomes more important, matter doesn't matter. So it's really very practical way of saying it. And the job of all the spiritual gurus has been that to take you off the matter. The matter is important. Of course, we live in the material world, and matter really is important to be handled on a day-to-day basis. But whatever we're doing outside is ultimately the mind that is handling all these things. All your commands, all your thoughts are ultimately creation of your mind. And if your mind is imbalanced, then so is going to be your external life also. So we started our discussion from science to Samadhi, step-by-step sutras. We went through that. The first sutra said life is energy. First explosion itself was that whatever we see is not matter. It's really spiritual. And scientifically now we have come to conclusion, quantum physics and all that, that ultimately everything boils down to energy. All the matter ultimately boils down to so-called particles. But when you really go down into the details, particles are not particles. They are just possibilities of energies that just manifest as particles, but they are not really particles. They have a dual nature at that level. Just the same way we have a dual nature. We are not only matter, but we are also spirit. So the mind is an interface between the spirit and the matter. But the whole continuation is ultimately only energy. So life is energy. If we start looking at the world as not as a material world, but as an expression of an energy field, then our outlook will start changing little by little. So that was the first thing. And then we said that whatever is energy that is in the material form that we do see it, it can be manifest and it can be unmanifest. So whatever we see, we can perceive is manifest, but that does not mean that the rest of the energy field has disappeared. It is also present in unmanifest way. So once we start grasping this concept, whatever is manifest will not necessarily make us attached to it, and whatever does not become manifest and becomes unmanifest will stop haunting you. We will not be missing our loved ones. We will not be missing the things that we don't see anymore. We will not going to be running around crazy for the things which we lose and this and that and all that. So manifest, unmanifest are both the same aspects of the same energy. Whether we can grasp it or not with our senses is another story. So then we moved on to the third sutra, and it says that out of the manifest there are some which is conscious and unconscious. So some that we call live and non-living organisms basically, but they both share existence. A stone is not living, so-called, and we consider ourselves living organisms. The trees and flowers and animals and humans and all that, they are so-called living animals, living entities. But entities which are living and non-living, they share the same common existence. The same stone, same minerals which used to be the part of the soil becomes part of us, and then as we move it along, it becomes part of the non-living kingdom also. So non-living feeds the living, living feeds the non-living. There is a continuous interplay going on between the flowers and the plants and the stones and minerals and all these things. So we are all interconnected. Every single heartbeat that you have is ultimately dependent on the total vast universe. So whatever you do, you are contributing to the total play of the consciousness. So little by little we're trying to go into the concept of ultimately Samadhi. So at this, that was the next sutra where and whatever is the manifest and unmanifest also is connected with a continuous stretch of energy. So there is nothing like a fixed compartment that a lot of people have made the mistake, but there is no fixed compartment, there is a gradual transition. So little by little we're going away from the material aspect of the world. That's why we say the matter doesn't really matter, it's the mind that matters. Because if the mind is equipped in a proper way, if it is designed, it's a beautiful instrument. It is a beautiful instrument given to us to enjoy this world. But if the mind is spoiled or it's focused in the wrong direction, we're not going to have any enjoyment in this world. For example, if a boy falls in love with a girl, all of a sudden everything looks so rosy. Everything is beautiful. The colors of the fall makes you feel so good. The rain, when the rain showers, it brings the message of love, like Kalidas and all those things. And all of a sudden when the boy and the girl breaks up,
or the girl says no, that's the end of the
and
story.
all of a sudden those colors of the fall say, oh my God, it's already winter here. And when the rain falls, oh my God, look at the bad clouds over here.
Even God is crying.
Even God is crying. So it's our outlook that what really matters. So it's the mind that's really more important, because mind is the sarthi, is what's driving the chariot of life. Our body is the chariot. Our 9 senses, the 5 senses of perception and 5 senses of 5 organs of action, the 10 horses, ultimately are driven by the mind. So mind is the sarthi. Sarthi has to be controlled by the higher level, the Paramatma. The focus should be on the spiritual side rather than the material side. So that's why we're going little by little away from the material world into the spiritual world. We should start focusing on our own mind. So that is the whole direction we're taking. And then we came into the 5th sutra. The 5th sutra said that whatever is in microcosm is also in macrocosm. Whatever are the smallest thing that we consider smallest and the biggest thing, they share the same thing. Composition of a grain of a sand and composition of a mountain is the same. Mountain boulders ultimately roll over with the river and then ultimately get crushed and becomes a sand.
Right.
And sand gets together, makes a boulder again.
Right.
All these things are continuously going on. So a grain of sand has no reason to feel inferior, and a mountain does not have any reason to feel superior. The same way, Atma, that we consider our small Atma compared to Paramatma, but Paramatma is the same, made out of the same material as what we are. We aggregate Atmas together makes Paramatma.
Right.
So Paramatma even does not have any reason to feel superior. So there is no superiority, there is no inferiority. In fact, there is no point in comparison. There is no point in comparing yourself with anybody else. Once you start comparing, then you're going into the taller and shorter and black and white and all that. But when the matter doesn't matter, what difference does it make? So it's the mind that should matter. So little by little, we're going into the phase where the mind does not really have any action left in the external world anymore. Comparisons disappear, superiority, inferiority complexes all disappear. So all these things leave the mind to do what? Go within itself and start studying yourself. Sarupanandji was quoting a famous example of Tapovan Swami. Actually, when the Chinmayanand himself was young and he was getting a training from Tapovan Swami, he was quoting that a person was coming from Lucknow, and normally Tapovan Swami had a very nonchalant look. He was very, he will never get overexcited about anything. He will never be depressed or cry or sad or anything like that. So he had a very balanced life. And then, but what this particular one, he got excited about. He was his childhood friend or whatever. So ultimately, everybody was excited that who is coming, So finally this guy comes, and then along with him brings like a teenage boy, like 14, 15. And those days they had a hippie hair and the bell bottom in pants and things like that. And Tapovan Swami was very excited to see him and say, all right, sit down. What brings you here today? So he says, I brought my grandson, and can you, give some blessings to him? He says, why? Well, he smokes and he watches all these movies and he's all these fashionable clothes, and he's never really paying attention to any spiritual stuff, and I'm afraid he's going to be lost in this world. So the Pavan Swami says, okay, bring him in, bring him. But he says he won't take off his shoes. He doesn't believe in all these things, all this crazy stuff and nonsense and this and that. So the Pavan Swami says, okay, no problem, let him come with the shoes. So he comes with the shoes and he makes him sit there. And for 45 minutes he has conversation with this kid. All he asks is, says, what are the best movies right now? The Pavan Swami asking, what are the best movies? Which heroine is acting in it? What hero is acting in it? What are the famous songs? This and that. And what are you doing in school? Oh, I just go, but, mainly just to meet the friends and look at the girls. And so as the Pavan Swami was like talking his language, he also started, he opened up. And for 45 minutes, the conversation went on. And then he says, okay, so I'm going to go. So he said, all right, no problem. But 6 months later, this guy walks in again, the guy from Lucknow. He brings a big basket of fruits. Thank you, Swamiji. It really changed the life of my grandson. He has really changed everything. He's wearing Indian clothes now. He's getting up early in the morning, worshipping. And what did you do? So all this, Chinmayanand and Swarupanand, they were all excited to find out what does it mean? How did you do it? So he said that for 45 minutes I just talked to him about all these things that made him kind of comfortable with him, because he had came with the ideas that all Swamis, all they talk about, just give you advice and this and that. Right?
Yeah.
But he says in the last 1 minute, he says, if we think we are like tuning together, meaning if you have a little bit of respect as a friend, just do me a favor. Wake up 5 o'clock in the morning every day for 20 minutes and then go back to bed. He said, that's all I have to do? He says, yeah, that's all. That's all you have to do. So then he asked the kid, said, what happened? Did you follow his advice? He says, yes. Because he was a cool guy. And after all, he didn't give me any hard time, and he didn't give me any advice, nothing in the lectures and all that. So I thought, there is no harm in doing this. But he said, all right, I'm going to keep that promise. But he says, once I started doing it, 5 o'clock in the morning, I'll wake up. And then after a few days, and I was just thinking, what am I doing here? But 20 minutes, he said, that's all I have to do, then go back to bed. So it's not a problem. But when I did that, then I started realizing the nature was so beautiful. The sun was rising, the birds were chirping, the cool breeze was passing, the leaves were moving around, dancing. All of a sudden, the world started appearing so beautiful that I thought I must have missed for all these years that I was doing. And then he had a time to reflect upon himself.
Yes,
then he started thinking that, what am I doing to my old grandfather? Look at him, he so cares about me, and yet I keep on doing all the things that are totally against him. And it doesn't take much of an effort to do all the things that he wants me to do, which he ultimately wants me to, for my own good. He's not going to benefit from all this. So little by little he changed, and in 6 months he became a new person. So the bottom line is, the more you spend time with your own mind, then the new avenues open up. Because so far, we have been trying to create a whole new world within the material world. And we think it's going to be us forever, ours forever. But it doesn't. Kachi kand utte kana hai. Kachi diwar pe kana baitha hai. Right? The wall, which is the sand wall, the crow is sitting on it, thinking that this is going to be forever. And he's shouting at the top of his voice that this is my kingdom. But he knows that the diwar is kachi. It's made out of sand. It's going to fall apart anytime. It's going to have to fly over. The same way, we are banking on this material world so much. We think it's going to be ours forever. We trying to collect these things and hoard these things and think it's going to be us forever. But we are really spending our efforts in the wrong direction. We should be spending, and we have neglected the mind itself, which is the most beautiful thing. And we need mind all the time anyway. But for us, matter is more important than the mind. And that's where we are suffering. Nobody says do not handle the matter, but handle the matter with a beautified mind. The mind, which is an ultimate gift of the spirit, the ultimate gift of Paramatma, we should be utilizing in a beautiful way. And this is the process how we're going. Take the mind away from the matter. Matter doesn't matter. So little by little, spending more time with the mind itself takes us into that journey that goes into the spiritual zone. So, the five sutras that we talked about basically brought us away from the material world, and now you have to start realizing that there is something called self, there is something called mind, there is something called Atma, Jivatma, which ultimately is a part of huge conglomerate called Paramatma. So, once we start realizing that all these things don't really matter, all the things which is outside is going to be very transient. Whatever we gain, we're going to have to live it. Whatever we lose, we haven't lost anything because we didn't come with anything. So gaining and losing, all those concepts are useless.
It's transient.
Transient. Winning and losing is also transient. So people who get excited about winning are stupid, and people who get depressed about losing are also stupid. So basically, material world is a stupidity in a way, but stupidity will look stupidity only if you gain the intelligence of spiritual. That's called vidya. Vidya sa amukte. Vidya is the vidya that makes you free.
It's okay.
The knowledge has no value if it does not give you freedom. That's why in Sanskrit we have a beautiful saying that vidya sa mukte. So only the vidya is the one that can make you free. But the knowledge that we call traditional knowledge, intellectual knowledge of the material life and material world binds us more. The more you know about X number of wines, X number of gourmet dishes, X number of this and X number of that binds you more and more and more. You get more bound and bound. And then you go hang out in a circles that, oh, you don't know about this wine? How come you don't know? You haven't tried this restaurant? All these things ultimately bind you. But then we call that real knowledge. Then we walk around with a chip on our shoulder that I know about this wine and I know about that. My dad is like that and my father is like that. My friend is like that. And that's all we talk about. Wine, women, wealth. That's all there is to talk about. But because our focus is on the material side, which we think is going to take us somewhere. But it does not take us anywhere. There is nobody has left with any kind of gains in this world that he's put his name in the moksh. So when it comes to that, all you need is 6 feet. That's all. Yeah. So ultimately that's all it matters, really. But we don't realize all these things, and we keep on going all our life without making any efforts to go within. So spirituality basically gives you a different dimension. In matter, there is a division. Whether you're winning, losing, gaining, holding, losing, all those things keeps you going back and forth, back and forth. But yoga gives you a different dimension where you can be standing apart from all these things. You will still exist. When you go into the meditation, you go into the deeper layers of your mind, and you will realize the thoughts disappear, but you still exist. So there is another existence that we're carrying with us all the time, but you're never aware of it. So the meditation takes you into, and that's real you. That's the time when you realize that you are that spiritual self. But then realization of that spiritual self makes you realize that all the things that you used to run after are so puny, they're so tiny, they are so insignificant compared to what you have. And the beautiful thing is that when you reach that state, you realize that it was always there. So when you reach to the state of self-realization, there is nothing else left to do. Basically, you just sit and enjoy a tea or a coffee. And there is all the things disappear because all your sufferings are because of the matter. Material world is what creates the anxieties and stress and all these things. But when you transcend all these things, there is nothing else left to worry about. There is nothing else to suffer about. So this is the journey we're taking slowly.
But when you reach realization, you don't go away from material. You still
no.
Material
still, does not matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, but you're still with it.
Of course. You don't disappear.
You're still interacting with it.
It's the other way around. Now you're enjoying the material in a different way.
Right.
So the world will still be the same,
right,
but now it will look more beautiful to you because every interactions with the material world that you will do, you will get a hint of Paramatma.
Right.
A flower blooms and you look at the beautiful flower and you will remember Him. When you see the beautiful sky, previously you had no time to look at the beautiful sky. You were busy making money, you're going here and going there and this and that. All of a sudden you start paying attention to these things, and all of a sudden it brings you the message of God.
Right.
So all these things take you in that direction, but you still in the same material world, yeah. So that takes us to the 6th sutra. The 6th sutra says that giving and receiving is an art. Once we are living in this material world, the material world where there is constant exchange of energies taking place. When I give you something, I'm giving you my energy. When you receive something, you're receiving something from me, whether it's a material world or the spiritual, advice, knowledge, whatever. But there is a continuous flow of energy from one entity in the material world to the next. So giving and receiving, it has to be observed. Whoever is the giver has to be a receiver at the other end, otherwise he cannot give. A king cannot give any donation unless he gets it from the people.
Right.
So people are the giver, he is the receiver. But once he receives, he becomes a giver. So giving and receiving is all relative. So now we have to start coming out of that concept also. When you give something, you are not the giver, you are just passing it on. The clouds, bring the rains. Rain makes the river. River rushes into the ocean. But ocean seems to be receiving. But ocean also has to give back. It has to make the clouds. Clouds have to go back to the mountains, make the rivers again. So river was the giver. River becomes the receiver. And that process is continuously going on. This